Hey, what's going on, New Lifers? My name is Stan Rada. I'm the Linton Hall campus pastor, and I'm glad to be able to spend a few minutes with you here today. If you are watching this, we are following up on a message from this past Sunday where we talked a lot about fear and having faith more than we have fear. As you may have heard, there's a small thing going on in the world. This virus, the coronavirus, this COVID-19 thing is spreading, and you may have noticed a lack of toilet paper on the shelves, a lack of hand sanitizer, a noticeable rise in people panicking and hoarding things. And there's just a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear and uncertainty about what all this means, what stuff is shutting down, we're losing sports and all of this kind of stuff. And so Sunday, our lead guy, Brett Andrews, spoke and said, hey, let's have some faith, more faith than fear, and here's some ways we can do that. Well, we had a whole bunch of stuff that we wanted to share with you on that specific topic, but we actually had so much content that we ran into a time problem and decided, well, we'll try to take this and turn it into a couple of extra devotional type videos, and we hope these encourage you throughout the week. And so one of the things that we really wanted to say about the coronavirus, all the stuff going on in the world when it came to this idea of fear, is we wanted to say, don't fret. Remember, sin is horrible. Remember the damage that sin has caused. You can look around the world in any number of cases and see just the amounts of evil that are in people. We see darkness in all the previous generations before us, terrible things that have happened. And so we kind of get to 2020 and we go, why is there even a coronavirus at all? Why does that have to be a thing? And some people would just step back and blame God. They would step back and say, well, if there is a God and there's a coronavirus, then therefore God is not good. And we would get into some really big philosophical discussions about if there's evil, is there good? And should there be? And is God good? And if he is good, then maybe he's also evil. And it would really snowball very quickly into some pretty deep philosophy. But from the Christian worldview, the Christian perspective, we would say part of the reason why there's something like a coronavirus in the world is simply because sin is horrible. The Bible actually tells us a little bit about this in Romans chapter 5 in verse 19. It shares with us kind of the entrance of sin into the world and the damage that it is causing. Romans 5:19, for just as through one man's disobedience the many were made sinners, the one man is Adam. In the very beginning, Adam and Eve had a perfect relationship with God. They had a perfect garden. Everything was taken care of for them. Life was great. All of the longings were fulfilled. They had everything you could possibly imagine. They walked with God. Hand in hand, physically together. It was an amazing thing. And they had it perfectly. But then sin enters the picture when Adam and Eve eat of one tree that God says, don't eat of that tree. God had to give them the choice, the free will, to prevent them from becoming robots, forced to love him, forced to follow him. And so he gives them free will, he gives them the option, and they choose sin. They choose to walk away from what God calls them to do. So, through one man's disobedience, the many were made sinners. The entire world was impacted because of their sin. All of us are sinners as a result. Our relationships with each other are broken. Our relationship with God is broken. Our relationship with creation itself is broken. Everything is messed up now because Adam and Eve chose to sin. If there was one way that I would illustrate this for you, it would be to imagine a pond. And in this pond, at one side of the pond, you have Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve are in this relationship with God, and he tells them, listen, if you want to maintain perfection, if you want to maintain an amazing life, whatever you do, don't pour this poison over here into the pond. And they take the poison and they do it anyway, and they just pour a little bit into the water, and over time, that poison begins to infiltrate and just take over the entire pond. If you had a cup of water and you poured some bleach into it, the entire glass of water would be contaminated. You would not drink any of that water. That would be a very bad decision. Now, in the pond illustration, it takes a while. It's the years and the decades and the generations of people. It takes some time, but that poison makes its way through the entire pond and affects every single person. We all drink from the pond because we're alive and we're humans, so we are prone to sin and brokenness because the pond is poisoned, and we also add our own poison in. There's none of us that are perfect, none of us that are living sinless lives. We've all made mistakes, we've all lied, we've all broken the speed limit or whatever. We've all made mistakes along the way, hurt people along the way, and that's us in our own kind of way, pouring a little bit of poison into the lake. Why is there even such a thing as the coronavirus? It's here because our world is broken because of sin, because of one man's disobedience. Everything changed. Romans chapter 8, verse 22 references this as well, even in nature. It says, "For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together with labor pains until now." It's this idea of when you talk about something like climate change, it's like, well, that's probably a thing because the earth is groaning against what shouldn't be. It was created to be perfect. It was designed to be perfect. And now because of sin, it is broken. And we can't fix that on our own. We can't go back in time and fix this. And so you finish out Romans 5, for just as through one man's disobedience the many were made sinners, so also through one man's obedience the many will be made righteous. So you have Adam and Eve in the beginning who sin, and because of that, they create this wave, this ripple of disobedience and sin in the entire world that we see all around us. But through one man's obedience, we will be justified. That one man's obedience is Jesus who goes to the cross for us to save us, to reconcile us. The Romans 8 even says that the earth is looking forward to the day of redemption when it will be made new again. And there's coming a day when Jesus will make all things new, when the earth will be set right, when our relationship with God will be set exactly perfectly as it's supposed to be. So don't fear the coronavirus. Be smart, be wise about it, take the right precautions, don't be unwise and unsafe, but also don't fear. Part of why we can go through something like this and not be afraid is because we know it's just the end result of sin, and that's on Adam and that's on us, but there's coming a day when all of this will be set right, and we will walk in perfect relationship with God. Again, hope this encourages you another day or two this week.